All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started with our panel. I'm going to do some quick panel introductions. If you look at page 5 of your HBJ paper that's on your table, you'll see full bios of our 3 panel members, and you'll see those bios being extremely robust. It would take all of the 30 minutes that we have to introduce their experience. We're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to talk to you something personal, which for each one of our guests. Todd, I'm going to start with you. Todd, so I understand you and Heather are certified divers.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And you've dove in over 14 countries. I understand you had an experience recently with a 10-foot reef shark. Tell the crowd about that.
Well, you know, Jim, it was an amazing experience, but you quickly realize how small you are and how vulnerable you are to this amazing fish in the sea. And, you know, I was consuming a lot of air, very nervous, wondering what my exit strategy would be. And luckily, it decided there was something more interesting to, go eat. And, my partner driving, my wife, she was right next to me. We exit the dive, and I said, "Man, could you believe that?" I was very nervous. And she said, "It didn't bother me at all. All I had to do was outswim you." So I never realized that being shark bait was part of our marital vows, but I know that now.
Well, that's interesting because my wife and I are certified divers, and she hasn't said that to me, but that might be her game plan also. So Louie, your high school class, how many graduates?
456, or 457.
457. Where did you finish?
456.
All right, so it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish. So as I recall, 5 years serving our country in the U.S. Coast Guard.
Yes.
And then a mechanical engineering degree where you finished number 2.
Yes.
And
you just have to get your priorities right. And never give up on yourself or your kids. Always have a plan.
And along with running a large petrochemical site, you're also a restaurateur. You've got some restaurants up in Dallas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, my buddy has the restaurants in Dallas. We went to high school together, and he was number 457. And he owned 6 McDonald's in Dallas.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
And Tim, so I think the first 44 years of your career, you lived very, very close to home, but things changed in the last 15 years. Tell the group a little bit about your travels and what you've done with Chevron.
Yeah, I grew up in California, actually lived for 15 years within 80 miles of where I grew up, and so I knew where I was going to have Thanksgiving every year, and I thought 2 yellow labs and $50,000 a year was nirvana, that was going to be it. And then I had a job offer in Salt Lake Refinery, and we never looked back. So this is actually, Pasadena is my 5th facility, and so far I'm the only Chevron employee that's worked at all of our 5 wholly owned facilities. So once we got the travel bug, it was on. But so never say never, I suppose, is the takeaway from that.
All right, thanks, Tim. So now you know a little bit more about the lives of our 3 guests here today. Todd, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about your current role in your company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So, I work for Oxychem. We have 5 facilities here in East Harris County. 1 chloralkali, 2 VCM, vinyl chloride monomer, which is the primary raw material in the manufacturing PVC, and we have 2 PVC plants as well. I'm the plant manager responsible for our vinyl chloride monomer facility here in LaPorte. I've been there the last 6 years, and just love all the opportunities that it presents itself. I'm responsible for the safe operation and of over 250 employees. They've been manufacturing product there for over 44 years. But it's truly an honor. I can't do this by myself. I'm honored, but what I think is my staff is industry best. Professionals in engineering, safety, environmental, human resources, finance, operation, maintenance. And, our primary responsibility is, as we transition and bring new people into our facilities, not only teaching our technology, but teaching our culture and our values and learning how to deliver our results responsibly. And I can't do that without my team, and I think hands down they're the best.
That's pretty unique. 5 plants. I'm going to try to get this right. 2 in Deer Park, 1 in Pasadena, 2 in LaPorte.
That's correct. So
collaboratively, so you have 5 plant managers. You get a chance to collaborate with the other 4.
Absolutely. The collaboration is very frequent. We deliver and receive raw materials and product to each other. We share common utilities, so we talk frequently. We recently just had our most current employee event celebration last weekend, and we do that as a team. So we do operate independently, but we are all closely knitted in our results.
Well, thank you. So, Louie, tell us about Kaneka. We know you're a Japanese company. Tell us a little bit about your role.
Okay. I was the site manager and vice president of operations for several years here in Pasadena. We're located off of Underwood Road. We have 5 business units. We're a specialty chemical company, I'd phrase it. We make some unique products, and we have about 450 people on site today. I mentioned to the chairman of the board from Japan that I was thinking about retiring, and so they replaced me, and he asked me to work on this special project of his. And so now I'm working on a special project. It'll be a game changer for Kaneka, which basically will double our employees from 450 to 900. And we're trying to do it all in Pasadena.
All right. Okay, and we're going to get to that special project, but just a little bit later. So Tim, tell us a little bit about your role at Chevron.
So I'm the general manager of the Chevron Pasadena Refinery, and we took possession of it May 1st of 2019, so we're fairly new here in the refining business. Obviously, we've got a few colleagues downtown. That's where the majority of our upstream company works. But we've got 340 Chevron employees and about another 300 contract partners that come in every day into the facility. And relatively, it's a 100-year-old facility, so we've been investing a lot in it and modernizing it a lot, and staying true to the Chevron values of being safe and reliable. So it's been a challenge. We've just been here a few years, but we've definitely made significant improvements in that facility. So got a couple tables of my colleagues here today. Maybe get a chance to say hi, but that's it.
Tim, I'm going to come right back to you. You didn't start your career as a plant manager. Tell us about the path to becoming that plant manager at a big refinery.
I actually worked a couple years out of high school, and I think that was kind of informative. I was a mechanic, actually, and I went to Hawaii or someplace on vacation. It took me about 2 weeks to get the grease out of my hands. And my father's got his master's degree, and my mother's actually got her PhD, and I thought, man, maybe they're onto something. And so I went to University of California, Davis, got my mechanical engineering degree, and then you're going to think I don't have a very good plan, but I went to a job fair and I went to work for Chevron because they paid the most. So that's probably not, but the interesting part is I've stayed 31 years. So I think a pretty normal, we'd say a normal career, just start out really in individual contributor jobs, reliability and engineering on capital projects. And then I just kind of got drug into leadership roles really, and so, I think you guys' career is probably similar. You do a section head role or do a turnaround manager role, and then you just, if you're show the aptitude for leadership, you just kind of keep going in leadership. So I think it was unique. I have a lot of mechanical integrity background, reliability background, and since we purchased this facility, obviously we needed to make sure that we had good control over that. So my skills really uniquely suited for this plant here in Pasadena.
Well, Tim mentioned career fair, and interesting, 2 days ago we had a big career fair at San Jac, and 33 different companies. I see a number of those represented here today. Tells you how important those career fairs are. Louie, how about yourself? We know you were in the Coast Guard, and then you came in. Tell us about how you got to the position you're at today.
Well, very similar to Tim, I was a mechanical engineer, and, you know, all your operational folks out there will say that, you know, the bottom of the whole organization is maintenance. And so that's where I started. I started in maintenance. I was the first one there and the last one to leave every day, and I just worked my way up and did the reliability section, mechanical integrity, designed a lot of unique equipment, and ended up in some leadership roles and took some leadership classes, and, you know, ended up working my way up the ladder to, you know, manager, director, you know, then site manager. So,
You know, Louie, it's interesting. Whenever we get a chance to meet with successful people like y'all, we always hear hard work and leadership. They seem to come together very closely.
well, also, you know, loyalty to a certain company. I know a lot of people go to work and they jump around to different plants and different companies, and they don't build that sustainable reputation, I guess you'd call it. And I think that's important today. Well, it was back in the day, you know, probably when me and Tim came to work, but it's different today than it was. So it's kind of hard to build your relationships and your reputation in 2 years.
Yeah, it's interesting about loyalty, isn't it? Because as you look across the group today, some of your customers are out here and suppliers. It's loyalty to the supplier, the customer, your neighbors, community. So Todd, you're operating one of the largest vinyl chloride monomer plants in the world. Tell us about your path to get there.
I tell you, for sure, it went by fast. So, you know, I'm a chemical engineer from the University of Tennessee. I started my career in the consultant business with a focus in process controls and instrumentation. I did that for 6 years and had the opportunity to get into a plant, and I started in project engineering and then maintenance engineering, working for a pharmaceutical company making active pharmaceutical ingredients. And then I got my first chance at operations, and I always wanted to lead an operational team. And from there, I got my opportunity with Oxychem, and I actually started at this vinyl chloride monomer plant as a superintendent back in 2006. I've worked in 5 different states working for Oxychem, progressing through the production ranks and leadership ranks, and I'm back here as a site manager. And just similar to these guys, it's really you know, pursuing your passion. You know, people want to follow leaders that are passionate about what they do, and making sure that they're in it for the success of the team, and that's really been one of my guiding principles.
Excellent. So to the crowd, we have some really good questions here that we're prepared for, but please use the Slido, put your questions on the screen, and we'll try to get to those. So Tim, I'm going to go back to you. So you talked about your career and the success to get there. Tell us about a challenge in that path that you could share with the audience.
Hands down, it's been Pasadena. I think there were a couple. I mean, I think probably the one that maybe is the most connective is we had a planned turnaround right when COVID hit. And so we didn't know, nobody knew, you know, what safeguards we needed to have in place and how serious, to be honest with you, how serious the whole thing was and everything else. But we just sorted through that, and in fact, I talked to the Impact folks the other day about this. The lesson I learned out of that is use your subject matter experts. And so I was not the right person to decide how we dealt with the safeguards to deal with COVID, but we just went to obviously Chevron's a decent sized company, so we've got medical people in it, and that's who I relied on. And we, but not blindly, we obviously had to operationalize it, but that was very, very challenging, very, very new, and we went ahead and took the turnaround, and we had no on-site transmission, which I was very proud of. But again, we listened to our experts. I didn't set the policy on COVID. So.
Well, on behalf of the community, we were so excited when the announcement came out that Chevron had purchased the refinery and was going to run that, because your history and your business acumen and how good you've done in the community, it was exciting to have Chevron in our Houston community. So Louie and Todd, is there a challenge you'd like to share with the audience today?
I think along with what Tim was talking about COVID, we have a bunch of shift workers that do shift turnover. We'd wipe out 2 shifts out of 1 operating unit. And we had 3 days of downtime during the 2 years of COVID, I guess you'd say. 3 days of downtime in 1 department, but we were able to adjust shifts, and we followed CDC guidelines. So if one person on the shift, when we first started out with COVID, if one person on shift had COVID, we quarantined the rest of the shift. And these people were going home and catching COVID from their family and then bringing it to work, and it was fun juggling shifts and people to keep the units running. But sometimes you have to shut them down.
So on behalf of Mary Jane and ECMA, 132 plants, 30,000 direct employees, over 100,000 indirect, how about a round of applause for operating during COVID? Todd, what was the biggest learning in your career being a leader? Tell us about that learning process, or maybe a one-time event.
Well, for me, a lot of times it's learning to trust your team and get out of the way. So, I have very strategic objectives, visions, and goals, and for me as a leader, I had to learn to not be too concerned about the pathway, because there's different paths to achieve the goal. So it's getting out of the way, letting my team do what they do best, and letting them reach those successful milestones.
And maybe that's a lesson for our students in the audience. It's all about teamwork. These plants are very complex. It takes a lot of teams to make it work. Louie, how about in your area? Do you have a little bit of leadership story you'd like to tell?
Well, we use the Leadership Challenge at Kaneka it's a book by Posner. We train most everybody on it, and everybody talks the same language. We use the same models. We do team building exercises, and we always talk about Leadership Challenge. And it's really improved trust up and down the organization. I mean, from the operator all the way to the site manager, the president. I think, part of leadership is trust. And so if they trust you, you have to trust them to do the right thing. And we're changing our training philosophy. We're going from the what to the why. I think operators are very skilled at doing exactly what you tell them to keep it at 30 pounds, but we need to teach them why they have to keep it at 30 pounds. And I think if you start with the why and then go with the what, it's more beneficial. So we're restructuring our whole training program around that, and also including the whys and the SOPs.
Excellent. That's some wisdom. Tim, I'm going to go to you, and I'm going to take the second question off Slido, and it's about change in the oil and gas business and petrochemicals, and I know Chevron is at the tip of that spear around change. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about some initiatives.
That's not an easy question. And if I knew the answer, I'd probably be doing something else. But man, it has changed so much in the last, I'd say, 5 years. So we've got a whole company now that really is dealing with, when I say company, a subsidiary of our company that deals just with carbon, basically. So talking about green hydrogen now, carbon sequestration, and you've probably read about it if you follow Chevron at all. So that's like its own piece. The second piece is that we've already completed a project in our El Segundo facility, and we are starting to look at alternate feedstocks. So we are starting to bring some biofeedstocks into the conventional facilities, and again, where it's, it needs to be policy enabled, essentially, to be profitable, but we are in that. And we've made a commitment to Chevron to, I can't remember the year, I think it's 2030, to have 100,000 barrels a day of renewable fuel. So I think to summarize, we're really on the leading edge with some of the carbon sequestration, some of that technology, and then we're really, we're balancing staying in the conventional hydrocarbon business, but then looking at alternate feedstocks.
Yeah, what we know is we'll need more energy every day, right? It's got to come from a lot of different areas. Todd, I know you're a downstream guy, but of course Oxy's big in the Bakken, and you've made your company has made a lot of commitments to that, and they've hired a lot of our students there also. Any comment that you'd like to make around those technologies and those advancements that Oxy has done?
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of my information like you do with some of the investor announcements and the leadership and vision of our organization. Looking forward to opportunities in direct air carbon capture. They've announced that $1.5 billion project out in the West Texas. So industry is changing, and I think the lesson learned here is that the communities have more voice than ever in how industry is going to react long term. So as we focus on carbon reductions, more recycling, I mean, this is what our communities are expecting of us, and our industry is going to lead us there.
So let's talk about community engagement. A mentor of mine, when one of my first plant managers, said that as a plant manager, you have a responsibility to be a good neighbor, right? The community allows you in the neighborhood, and it's more than just hiring people and paying taxes. It's much bigger than that. And Louie, I know Kaneka's very, very engaged in the community. Tell us a little bit about your values and your culture around community engagement.
Okay. We're involved with the community in many different ways. We have slowed down due to COVID, but we're picking it all back up. We were so involved with volunteering and donating that we actually established a foundation, the Kaneka Foundation, that kind of manages all that for us. But you have to be a good neighbor in the community just to operate, because they actually can shut you down, especially if you want to build a new plant and you have a bad reputation. And I can tell a quick story. Somebody from Baycap called and was complaining about noise in one of the neighborhoods, and they said it was Kaneka, so I paid $20,000 and hired a sound engineer. He went around and did all this sampling and everything, and come to find out it wasn't my plant, it was somebody else. So I called somebody else and told them, hey, you got the noises from you, and they made some modifications and the noise went away, and I hadn't had a complaint in 3 years. So, but sometimes you actually have to pay to get out of trouble. It's pay to play, if you will.
Well, you use all the resources, right?
I did.
So I know it's an important question for y'all, so I'm going to give you that opportunity to talk about community engagement. Todd?
Yeah, I was recently elected to the board in the LaPorte Chamber of Commerce, and working with a lot of the nonprofits in the area, you really get a feel for how much need there is in our community. I mean, we're very blessed to be working in the facilities. We've got great high-paying jobs, but there are tremendous people that work for nonprofits that give people the things that they need, and I never feel like we have enough time. So you've got Bay Area Habitats for Humanity, you've got a lot of different organizations. I just want to encourage folks that the importance, if we all donated just one set of school supplies, and everyone in industry did that, all of our schools locally, they would never have to struggle about getting the school supplies that they needed. No one should be hungry on Thanksgiving. Food is at the highest prices they've ever been. So I just want to encourage all the plants and all the folks to reach out, find out how we can help these people, and make sure no one goes hungry during this Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Tim, community engagement?
Yeah, I mean, nothing particularly different. I think a couple things that I see, there is huge need. And it's my government affairs, I have a full-time government affairs manager who deals with this. And I mean, she has to make tough decisions about who we support and how we go do that. But I mean, I think about it, it's like, you can choose to be a bad neighbor at the house, but it's your neighbor. And so I think about the businesses that way. It's not that, it's just neighborly. I mean, you need to be a good neighbor if you want to live in a community, right? It bleeds between the professional and the personal, quite frankly. So, anyway, and it's fun. I mean, we've had some great engagements, and my folks have really gotten into it. You know, they're just more bikes every year at Christmas for the community. So it's fun. It's fun. Proud of it.
All right, we're going to go back to Slido, and Todd, we'll start this one with you, and it's talking about employee turnover. And the question is, are we ever going to have a team where we have employees with 20 plus years and they don't move around as frequently as they do today? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we mentioned earlier the landscape has changed. I think the biggest challenge is that we've all grown so much that there's more open jobs than there are people to fill them. And until we take care of that balance, it's going to be a challenge to continue to staff these plants and have these long-term employees. So we've got to work and engage our local colleges, San Jac College, and partner with them and make sure people understand the opportunities that are out there for skilled trades, instrument techs, maintenance techs, operators. We have to do more to encourage that and make sure people understand the opportunities so that we can slow the turnover and fill all these really great paying jobs here in Houston.
Tim or Louie, any thoughts on that one?
I just think there's science to it. I think the military does a good job bringing brand new people in and doing some very important and dangerous things. And so we've spent a little bit of time in that space, but I think it's going to be time pretty soon where we're going to be forced, where the turnover, we're fine now, but where the turnover is just so great that you can't do it the way you've been doing it. You've got to put those safeguards in place to just know you're going to have a new person in the facility on the equipment as the demographics. That's my opinion.
So we would never assemble a group like this and not talk about safety. I'm so impressed with your safety records, and I recognize your most important asset is clearly the people and how you value that. So Todd, tell me a little bit, that impressive safety record that Oxy has, how did you get there?
Well, I think it starts that, the expectation is zero, right? And, when you come into a facility, everyone understands that we can do the jobs and we can do all of our jobs every day with no injuries. After that, it's leadership. It's making sure that, your frontline leaders all through your management team understand that, when you go do something, we're going to do things the right way. I mean, we've got great systems, we've got great procedures, but when something's unusual and not right, they've got to have the confidence to stop and ask for help. And if you have that linearity with your organization and people engaged in understanding what the real priority is, you can be successful.
Okay.
Yours, Louie.
Okay. In 2019, we struggled with safety, personnel safety. We had 6 recordables. Up until that time, Kaneka had been a onesie, twosie. Every once in a while, we'd go a year without a recordable. And these are all minor back strains, but people didn't go home the way they came to work. So it was a recordable, no lost time injuries. And then in 2019, we got a focus group together, and we figured out that management, engineers, supervisors weren't out in the field monitoring operations. So everybody's spending all their time in meetings and trade shows and things. So what we did was we scheduled 8 hours a day on our calendars to be out in the field talking to the operators in different areas, operators and maintenance. And we worked 3 years without a recordable. And a couple months ago, we had a gentleman strain his back. So we started back out at zero again. The clock started at zero. So we're back to, 9 months today that we hadn't had a recordable. But really, right now, we're focusing on process safety because, as you don't focus on things, you kind of lose track of them. So they're refocusing on process safety right now. And hope to make some improvements in that arena like we did in personnel safety.
How important is process safety, Tim, to Chevron? That's a softball.
Well, I mean, we talk about community license to operate. We have got to keep it in the pipes, plain and simple. So, I mean, that's my background. I mean, honestly, it's probably the first thing you think about because it can have an impact. It definitely has an impact on the employees and it can have an impact on outside the facility. So I think it's paramount. I think it's actually one of the most important things. It's interesting hearing him talk because we've been around a while and I share that. We had similar deals with Chevron, and I'm digressing, but on COVID, because we couldn't have supervision come in, or we chose not to, and we started to see that oversight erode. And so obviously we bolstered that back up, but that was across all our sites. So that resonates with me. That's a real thing.
Isn't that interesting? That leadership by walking around, right? That concept that we talked about decades ago, how important that is, that visibility, right? All right, so a lot of the people in the audience are contractors and they're very interested in the projects that y'all have going. So I'm gonna start with Tim. Tell us about light tight oil. What does that mean and what does that mean to your refinery?
I mean, essentially, we purchased the Pasadena Refinery to connect to the Permian, the Chevron Permian Basin reserves. And so really the simplest, we're just tailoring the facility to take that variety of crude. That's really it. And so back in the day, a lot of times refineries would be built right or close to an oil field. And so refineries, they're not the same, right? If you know something about the business, the crude oil in the world is very, very different, and the ability to take those crudes. So that's what we're doing. We're spending money we're simplifying the facility. Overall our emissions are gonna reduce significantly because of this. We're gonna change our product slate a little bit, but we are staying in the traditional hydrocarbon business. So that's basically it, just to connect to that crude resource.
And what does it do for capacity at your facility?
The overall crude capacity doesn't change too much. It just, again, we can just run a full diet of the ever-lightening crudes that are coming out of the Permian.
Adapting to that change. Tell us about the size and magnitude, if you can, dollars, contractors. How long will this project take from start to finish?
I don't know if it's public or not per se. It's a $400 million-ish investment. We should have it commissioned in the second quarter of 2024. We're actually in the ground now. We just got our permits and got some good help with that from the community. And again, on the surface of it, it definitely has very, very positive environmental impacts to the community. And so it was kind of a slam dunk. But I'll be honest with you, what opened my eyes to it is that I really felt like some of the agencies, it was just too good to be true. When we actually came with a project that made us safer, made us more reliable, and helped the environment, they kind of said, there's no such thing. But we obviously showed them the facts, and it is the facts, and so we got it funded. It's going to be a good project. Yeah,
I guess when it's safer, more reliable, and more environmentally friendly, that's an easy stool to sit on.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So Louie, you've got some biodegradable polymers and a vision that Kaneka, maybe the largest vision the company has ever had around that. Tell us about your plans.
Okay. One of the processes that Kaneka uses is fermentation. We make Q10 through fermentation, and about 5 or 6 years ago, they decided they were going to make a biopolymer with fermentation. So the scientists in Japan went about and they developed a microbe that can actually make a biopolymer through the fermentation process. And the feedstock is plant-based. So it uses vegetable oil, canola oil, palm oil. The used oil for Kentucky Fried Chicken. Wherever I can get cheap oil, that's what we're going to use. So we're looking at building several units in Pasadena. The first one will come online in 2025. But we're worried about sustainability also. We're looking at carbon capture. These units use, if you know anything about fermentation, you got to have big agitators. You have to have big chillers, big compressors. You got to feed them a lot of air. Well, they use the O2 out of that, and so we're looking at maybe partnering with Air Liquide or somebody to provide us oxygen, and we'll just feed them straight oxygen instead of having all the electricity to run the compressors. Then I was telling the Japanese researchers about the carbon footprint of this plant, and he said that they're working on a new microbe that doesn't use oxygen, it uses CO2. So I could take my carbon capture and put it right back into my fermenter. It'll be a different strain of microbes, but it'll work. But the biodegradability of it, we're making straws, we're making single-use products like forks and spoons, utensils now. And I saw we have it on our website. We have at Kaneka.com, biopolymer division or whatever. But they have some pictures of some forks. They have a regular polyethylene fork, a wooden fork, and our product's called PHBH. And it has a chemical name about this long, so don't ask me to pronounce it. But they did it, and they left it out there for 20 weeks. The wood fork was still there. The polyethylene, it didn't even phase it, and our fork was gone. So it works. What it is the bacteria in dirt or in water. There's actually bacteria in salt water. It actually eats the polymer. It eats it, and so you don't have any microplastics. So basically it disappears.
So I'm guessing this was a long R&D effort from your team in Japan?
Yes, they're still working on it. They built I call it a large pilot plant. I think it makes about 5 metric tons. They're building a newer plant. They're tripling the size of that. And then we're going to come over to Pasadena, and we're going to build 5 plants and hopefully have, 100 metric ton capabilities in the next 15 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out where to get all the electricity, water, steam, land.
Well, I'm guessing that as soon as we walk off the stage, there's going to be a few people come over and talk to you about that.
Yeah, and I forgot my business card, sorry.
Yeah, we've never heard that before. I forgot my business card. All right. So Todd, in fact, we're getting some questions on chlor-alkali. So people are interested. We've heard a little bit about your big expansion plan. Tell us more.
Okay, so recently our company announced a $1 billion investment into our battleground chlor-alkali facility. Really going to ensure the long-term viability of that facility, as well as continuing well over 200 high-paying jobs and helping meet our ESG and sustainability goals. It's a plant modernization. The plant currently is a diaphragm asbestos chlor-alkali technology, and we're going to a membrane non-asbestos technology. And the reason for that is, one is some of it's market-driven. For those that use diaphragm caustic, you know that it has about 10,000 parts per million salt. The membrane product has less than 100 parts per million, so customers are really leaning towards going with that type of product. But also there's issues with asbestos supply, the long-term reliability of that supply, as well as some of the regulatory and political headwinds with access to continue to use asbestos, even though the chlor-alkali industry has done it safely for over 40 years. Everybody, I think, knows a lot about chlorine and the disinfection of water, but, it also is I call it an essential building block to a number of different chemicals. It supports crop sciences, it supports pharmaceuticals, medical supplies. When we talk about the plastics, blood bags, medical supplies, and some disposable medical supplies. So the products that we make are essential to, it's life-saving chemistry. With this project, the sustainability impact is, we think we're going to reduce about 21% of our carbon intensity, which is great for our goals. We're going to eliminate the need for asbestos waste, and we're also going look to reduce about 1.6 million miles of rail car travel between Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas. So a lot of good sustainability objectives met. It's really a phenomenal opportunity for that site and for our community. It's a fantastic project.
And if I recall my chemistry, the other side of that, on the chlor-alkali, is all that caustic that we wouldn't have a paper industry, we wouldn't have an aluminum industry without that side of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes into everything.
Well, I see our time is coming to a close. I want to thank you as a panel. I want to mention to the audience that I would be remiss by not saying that the 6th largest rodeo in the state of Texas, a $2 million rodeo with almost $1 million going to scholarships, will start tomorrow. And the biggest surprise is these 3 plant managers have volunteered to ride bulls opening night. So thank you to Chevron and Oxy and Kaneka for covering their workers' compensation costs at the end of that event. You did a great job. How about a round of applause for our panel?